Just a citizen.
Yeah, citizen, there you go. So we welcome everybody, thank you for coming and registering. All we ask is be respectful, be kind as much as possible as you see fit. Masking is making it a little awkward for us, so we're leaving that to personal choice. Obviously, masking can cut down the spread, but if you choose more comfortably not to wear your mask, we've tested both ways. So for the candidates, we can hear you with a mask, we can hear you without a mask. So your call on that. And the public, same with you, but if you feel that you need to cover with a mask, we ask you to make that decision. Okay? Anything else I need to intro? Moderators, so we are going to be asking the questions back and forth, correct? Sheriff question, commissioner question.
Yes.
And how do you want to determine who goes first? Do you want to draw a number 1 through 15?
Sure.
Okay.
That sounds like a good idea. Who wants to be the person who has the number in their head? We need someone neutral.
Yep.
How about you?
Okay.
Choose a number between 1 and 15, but don't say what it is.
Okay.
Okay? So, let's start with commissioner candidates. And before we get started, Jerry, is Mr. Martens okay with you?
That's fine.
And Jessica, do you prefer Miss or Mrs. character?
Mrs.
Mrs. And Commissioner, is that okay? Or would you prefer Mrs. O'Shaughnessy?
Either is fine.
Okay.
Whatever you're comfortable with.
All right, so let's start with Mr. Martens. Choose a number between 1 and 15.
3.
7. 8.
Who's closest?
Jessica.
Okay, so Mrs. character will go first. You'll need a new number now.
Okay. All right, I got it.
Let's go between 1 and 10,
Ooh, okay.
because there's only 2.
Okay.
Mr. Olson,
2.
Sheriff Myers.
7.
Mr. Olson's closer.
Okay, you got that? All right, perfect.
So it
We're
was either
set.
1 or 3. Maybe it was 2.
Who's going first in intro? Because you have 2 minutes to speak, so now who goes first?
Yeah, we'll start with that order in intro, and then we'll go, for the commissioners, we'll go this direction. Okay, so we'll go Jessica, Laura, Jerry, Jessica, Laura, Jerry, Jessica, Laura, Jerry.
Every question.
No, so you'll have you'll be able to do the intro first.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and start with you with the questions as well, but the next question will then go to the commissioner first. Following question will go to Jerry first, and so on, and the same with the sheriff's candidates, if that's okay with you. Perfect.
Okay. What else do we need to intro real quick?
I think we're good on that. We're gonna scoop this back so we can.
So
Jessica,
Emily
your
here will have flashcards, so you'll know how much time you have left and when you're to complete your thought process. So you'll see those cards there. For the public, if you have questions that come about, you have cards in front of you. Please pass it towards the moderators, and Gemma or Emily will grab them from you, so that you don't have to walk in front of the camera during the time. All right, what time is it?
How strict do you want us to be on the time? Do you want us to literally cut them off? Do you want them to be able to finish their thought? Do they get an extra 30 seconds? How strict do you want us to be on that?
Well, my gut feeling is just to be respectful, finish your thought, don't go into a full spiel when we give you the time's up. Just finish your thought at that point in time.
Okay.
And then, if they don't do that, you can just cut them off.
We'll bring in Bruno and Gino and
Right?
get the hook. Okay.
Yeah, so.
I know Steve was working out earlier, so he's ready.
How many questions are there?
Well, it's hard to say. We'll keep going for as long as the time. We have some prepared questions, but we're also expecting questions from the audience.
Okay. Does anybody have a question that they'd like me to put in before we start? Okay.
Is this one already here?
Yes.
Okay. If you could, yeah, please put whether it's intended for the sheriff candidates or the commissioner candidates, please. That'd be helpful.
So is everyone aware of how 2-minute intro, right? 2 minutes to respond to each question. Is that what I saw on the list?
Yes.
And then how much for a closing remarks?
90 seconds.
90 seconds, minute and a half for closing remarks. And Paul, are you lead moderator at this point in time, or is Steve?
Steve's taking the lead.
Okay.
He knows that now.
Well, you're asking the first question, right?
Oh, right.
Bart, can you still hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Jerry, can you hear okay?
Yep.
What?
I figured you could hear.
It's 6 o'clock, so we can start.
Somebody try doing introductions?
I guess I can. Welcome everyone to the Kittitas County Chamber of Commerce in-person town hall here at the Business Development Center in Cle Elum. Welcome candidates, thank you for joining us today. We are live in Facebook and we will have this rebroadcast for those to see on ECTV in Ellensburg and Inland TV in the Upper County. Moderators?
Well, I'm Steve Dupont. I'm the Director of Government Relations for Central Washington University. I've done these, moderated these forums for a number of years for the Chamber, and pleased to be here tonight, along with Paul Jewell.
Thanks, Steve. My name is Paul Jewell. I'm just a county citizen here to ask some questions and help facilitate, hopefully, a lively discussion with our candidates this evening. Thank you.
So the order is we're gonna alternate back and forth questions for the two candidates for Kittitas County Sheriff, and then our 3 candidates for Kittitas County Commissioner position number 2. And I'll be asking the questions to the candidates for Sheriff, and Mr. Jewell will be asking the question for the commissioners. So before we launch into questions, each candidate is going to be given a 2-minute opening statement. The timing will be taking place by the lovely chamber staff down here. We'll get a 30-second warning, and then at 2 minutes you'll be asked to stop talking. So I think we determined that who's doing the very first opening?
Sheriff's candidates.
Okay,
And Mr. Olson.
Mr. Olson, please.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me here. I appreciate this opportunity. My name is Bart Olson, and I want to be your next Kittitas County Sheriff. I live in the Thorpe area with my wife Brenda, and we are approaching our 25th wedding anniversary. Our daughter Madeline was born and raised in Kittitas County, and she will be starting her 3rd year in college, working towards a nursing degree. I have served over 28 years in law enforcement and recently completed a 25-year career with Washington State Patrol as a sergeant. The majority of my law enforcement career has been in Kittitas County. My career began early on, earning my bachelor's degree in law and justice and a minor in psychology from Central Washington University. I served as a Kittitas County Sheriff Office Reserve Officer, a Kittitas County Correction Officer, and then I was hired by the State Patrol as a Mansion Cadet, and then I graduated the Academy, and I became a trooper in King County, and eventually was able to transfer back to Kittitas County. I promoted to Washington State Patrol Sergeant in 2013, and I had supervisory authority over a detachment of troopers in Monroe, and then most recently in Ellensburg. Throughout my years of service, I have built a progressive reputation of trust, compassion, integrity, honesty, accountability, and professionalism. I have served in several jurisdictions working on solutions and partnerships to make our roads safer, have supervised a wide range of criminal investigations, and have trained many law enforcement officers with a focus on accountability and safety. I have served as a field training officer, was a member of the Aggressive Driver Apprehension Team, the Serious Highway Crime Apprehension Team, and the Washington State Patrol Safety Team. I was a member of the Kittitas County Law and Justice Council, and an executive board member on the council, and on the Law and Justice Grants Committee. I have been involved in our community through volunteering with Kittitas Valley Junior Soccer Association, the Kittitas County 4-H program, law enforcement torch run, shop with a cop, and other events, including Martens Rotary. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Sheriff Myers?
Well, good evening and thank you for coming. My name is Clay Myers and I'm seeking your vote to continue serving as your sheriff. I've been married to my lovely wife Debbie for 32 years. We've raised 3 wonderful daughters, all of whom are graduates of Central Washington University. I'm entering into my 34th year with the Kittitas County Sheriff's Office, where I've served as a corrections officer, as a patrol deputy, as an investigator, as a patrol sergeant, chief of operations, and the undersheriff before being appointed as the sheriff last fall. I've also served on the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs Legislative Committee, the Boating Safety Board, the Accreditation Board, and the Accreditation Committee. I've also worked as an accreditation inspector. Locally, I've served on the rodeo board, the fair board, the meth action team, the Wildland Wildlife Advisory Committee, and currently, I think my largest priority has to do with growth in our county. One of the first things that I did after being appointed sheriff was to develop a strategic plan to address the growth in the upper county by transferring resources, transferring our search and rescue program up here with the goal of eventually opening a west precinct so that we could provide a better service and reduce response times. I look forward to your vote.
And on the commissioner side, we're going to have Mrs. Carricker begin.
I really appreciate the Chamber of Commerce putting on this evening's event, and I look forward to answering all your questions. My name is Jessica Carricker, and I'm running for Kittitas County Commissioner in District 2. I'm joined this evening by my husband, Mike Carricker, who's sitting back with me. He and I were not born and raised in Kittitas County, but we've had the pleasure of calling Kittitas County home for over a decade now. With that, we chose to actually not just live in Kittitas County, but also grow our roots by giving back to the community and starting a small business in Ellensburg. That's a full-service automotive shop. That slogan is, for us, that is come in as a customer, but leave as a friend. Ultimately, we wanted to put service back into the service industry. 2020 was the year that we were going to grow exponentially as a business and also expand in many different areas. However, as many of you know and are well aware of, COVID-19 took a pretty big hit on us as a business and as individuals in our county. We started the Kittitas County People's Coalition, and through that entire process, I started listening to business owners and individuals in our community and in our counties talk about the hardships and the struggles they were going through. What I heard over and over again was that they were not being heard. Sorry, I'm not talking loud enough. Talk louder. All right. Normally that's not an issue of mine. Sorry about that. So through the process of going through the coalition and listening to individuals, I realized that we needed leadership in our community and our county that listened to the people and not just listened to the big donors that they were listening to business-wise. Your voice matters to me. It is time that we stand united. It is time that we elect a county commissioner who prioritizes individual rights, community health, which is medical, social, and economic, has common sense and reason, and has the backbone to put principles above politics. I, Jessica Carricker, a small business owner and a resident of Kittitas County, am that voice for the people. And I look forward to answering your questions this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carricker. Commissioner O'Shaughnessy, and if I just could reiterate, please project a little bit. There's some noise with the air conditioner that's over here and a couple other things, and we're having a hard time even with the sheriff's candidate. So as you answer questions next time, please project just a little bit more, okay? Thanks, everybody. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Good evening. My name is Laura O'Shaughnessy, and I am running to retain my seat as Kittitas County Commissioner for District Number 2. I'd like to start off by thanking not only the Chamber of Commerce, but the Central Washington Home Builders for putting this on this evening, as well as thanking those of you in the crowd and those who are watching on Facebook Live. I am a 7th generation Washingtonian with my heritage running from the farmlands of eastern Washington to the evergreen forests of the Snoqualmie Valley. I have a long history of service. Besides being commissioner for the last 4 years, I served for 5 years on the Roslyn City Council. I have served for 12 years and continue to serve as a volunteer firefighter for the Roslyn Fire Department, receiving my red card, which allows me to fight wildland fires when they come into our communities. In addition to that, I am a board member for the Roslyn Ronald Cleellum Heritage Club. Next, I'm going to talk about a couple of the accomplishments that's been made over the last 4 years. The first of which is the construction of the covered arena at the Washington State Horse Park. This project was built in part by the $1.5 million that was awarded to this project from the Kittitas County Lodging Tax Funds. In addition to that, I advocated strongly at the state level to ensure that additional funds that were needed for this project to get off the ground were funded, and the project is now up and going. We have also made code changes when needed. An example of this is when I brought together a group of the builders as well as the fire community to take a look at our Wildland Urban Interface Code and come up with changes that not only made common sense but took into consideration the safeties of the people that live here. I am asking for your vote so that I can continue to work for you over the next 4 years to build a better future for our next generation while respecting and preserving our rich past. Thank you.
And Mr. Martens.
Thank you. Hello. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Chamber and the Central Washington Home Builders for coordinating this forum and for all of you who are attending and watching. My name is Jerry Martens. My wife and I moved here to Upper County 20 years ago. We moved here, but we ran from the other side. So I came from Western Washington and lived in Washington my whole life. My career has been primarily in the construction industry in both commercial and residential construction. We now own a small business down here on 1st Street in Cleellum. I would encourage you to visit my website at jerrymartens.org to learn more about me. Transparency is very important to me, so I submitted an independent criminal background check. This also includes my education and employment verification. It's also available on the website. The decision to run for commissioner was not taken lightly and centered on what I feel has been a lack of leadership in our county. Kittitas County deserves commissioners that put proactive planning over forced reaction. We need to find definitions for what our county identity is, especially in the Upper County. Transparency and accountability mean something. Accessibility to your elected commissioners is essential. It must be on your time frame. We can accomplish this through modernizing government, making it easier for you as a citizen to participate. I pledge to open an Upper County office and will work from there as much as possible. Finally, we need unity on the commission to address the issues we've got. The concerns and issues of Snoqualmie Pass are very much different than what Vantage faces. The commission is a team and must work together for the good of the county over the individual aspirations of each commission. With a vision and plan in place, we can move together in unity.
Thank you, Mr. Martens. We'll now start with the questions. We have prepared questions, and we're also accepting questions from the audience. So you never know what you're going to get. I believe we're going to start with the sheriff's candidates. Is that correct?
Yep. All right. So since Mr. Olson went first on the opening statements, we're going to let Sheriff Myers answer the first question first. And this is an audience question. It's actually a really great question as a first question. Can you talk about your plans for increased service in the Upper County?
Yes, I can. I think, as I mentioned earlier, one of the first things that I put together as part of my strategic vision was to increase the services in the Upper County. This includes addressing search and rescue. With the continued growth in the Upper County, we found that 70% of our search and rescue calls are in the Upper County. So I've already started the process of moving that base from Ellensburg to the Cle Elum area. I've already met with the mayors up here to start a discussion on how we can best do that in conjunction with plans to open a West Precinct here in the future. We're currently in the process of adjusting manpower allocation so that we can have a better presence up here. Also working with the Upper County Task Force with respect to our transportation infrastructure. That's one of the things that's significantly impacted by our growth. The transportation infrastructure isn't just Department of Transportation. It affects traffic safety and it affects our citizens. This growth shouldn't have a negative impact on our public. If we set up the proper infrastructure, if we're able to provide the right service, then it's not going to be such a negative experience. One of the things that we're hoping to do with this West Precinct is look at ways that we can save expenses, save on costs for both the municipalities, the county, and even some of our state agencies. I intend on increasing our partnerships with the state, federal, local, and county law enforcement. I think that there's some room for discussion with respect to even a joint facility. There are some of those things that, some of those tasks that could be shared that could cost money. If we had a criminal justice facility, say, if we were housed in the same building, then perhaps some of the clerical work, some of the property room, some of the other work could be shared. It still maintains the identity of the local police departments, of the sheriff's office, but records management, we're on the same records management systems. So I think that we could save some money and still be effective as far as, setting up those resources. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Olson.
Okay. What I would like to see happen in the county is we need to have increased deputies, increase the amount of deputies that we have in the department. And that's going to take time, and it's going to, as our population grows, we're going to have to increase how many patrol deputies we have out there. In the meantime, what we could do is we can actually start recruiting for reserve officers. I believe currently there's probably about 17 to 20 reserve officers. Most of the reserve officers I've seen come from the county in years past have usually been from Central Washington University. But I also see that there's a need to start recruiting for reserves from people in the Upper County where they can do patrolling in their own neighborhoods. Citizen patrol is another way. It's actually a very valuable resource with the Sheriff's Office. The citizen patrols, they work in the 2-person cars and they go out. They'll do like vacation home rental checks and other means. They're an extra set of eyes and ears in the Upper County, and I think that's vitally important. I would like to see the county somehow get divided up in squads to where there is an Upper County, whether it's 2 deputies in the Upper County and 2 in the Lower County, and be able to just be assigned those autonomous patrol areas and specifically stay in those areas. And then I would like to see more proactive law enforcement. Looking at records, I see that collisions have gone up 100 in a year's time, and traffic stops have gone down as far as contacts have gone down, and they've gone down significantly over the years. So I would like to see more proactive police work, and I think people seeing more proactive police work out here would show the county that we're doing what we can to represent them in the Upper County. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move to the commissioners now. We should mention that none of the candidates have seen any of these questions. So every answer that you get is completely off the cuff, which makes for a much more exciting candidates forum. I'm going to start with something easy, and we're going to start again with Mrs. Carricker, and we'll go in the order of Mrs. Carricker, Commissioner O'Shaughnessy, and then Mr. Martens. And as every question comes along, we will continue that rotation, but the next question would then go to Commissioner O'Shaughnessy first, and then Mr. Martens first after that, and so on and so on. So Mrs. Carricker, if the county needs to make budget cuts due to the ongoing recession and a potential decrease in revenue as a result, what would you cut?
Well, hopefully with hiring the Ferguson group back in April, which is a group that is going out and looking for additional funds for our county back in Washington DC. We're not going to need to see those kind of cuts in our county. When it comes down to what we are needing to cut, we would have to be looking at some of our extra expenses around the county's edge. But because we hired the Ferguson group and we spent $60,000 to do so, my goal is to not have to see those cuts in the long run. So hopefully that was money well spent and that we can move forward and continue to run a tight ship. We will see budget cuts as far as and costs because the fair is not happening this year. We don't have the rodeo happening, but there's also additional expenses because of we're losing. Those revenues were also not spending the time and energy in that. The Parks Department didn't hire their extra help this year, and so with that, I'm hoping with the Ferguson Group and being a grant writing company, we can bring money back into the county.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Shaughnessy?
Thank you for the question, and this is one we're all thinking a lot about. So there's actually some good news for Kittitas County. Kittitas County has a long history of budgeting very conservatively. As we speak to date with the influx of the CARES Act funding, we are set to either meet or exceed our general fund budget, which means that in those departments, we won't see a need for cuts. The areas where there could be additional challenges would be our enterprise funds, and those are inclusive of public works, our transfer station, community development services, and those areas are funded through the amount of business that they bring into our community. We don't think we're going to get there, but if we had to, that would be the place that it would be most appropriate to start.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank
Mr. Martens?
Thank you. I've thought quite a bit about this, and I think it's an opportunity to revisit how we govern, what we provide as services, what is actually allocated through our county government. One of the places where I can see immediately, speaking to the enterprise funds and things, is there's a lot of places where we have overlaps with private enterprise. If we have to start looking at the restructuring of government services and things like that, those are the places that I would start. Looking at, we have a licensing division through the county. You can still get those privately. Services at CDS can be contracted out. It's not a cut of services, it's just a redistribution that I think the private sector could assist our county government in, and we start cutting the size and cost of government.
Thank you, Mr. Martens.
All right, well, the second question I had teed up is basically the same question. The sheriff will be in charge of managing the budget for the sheriff's office. We're possibly going into a budget reduction scenario. You're basically, the two options are cut expenses or go to the citizens or the commissioners for revenue. First question will be to you, Mr. Olson. What would you propose to in that situation?
Well, before making cuts, I'd want to know how much the cuts were, but I would be confident showing that I was fiscally responsible as sheriff and showing that I have the responsibility to be ethically running the sheriff's office. I would feel comfortable going to the commissioners, and if there was a need for the increase or there was a decrease in revenue funds, I would feel comfortable going to the commissioners and showing that I'm responsible and that asking for more funds should the need arise. That's a lot of gray area there. I'd have to know a little more about how much was being cut and where that would be cut from specifically. So, that's about it. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, I've managed the sheriff's office budget for approximately 15 years. Our budget is approximately $10 million, or just a shade over $10 million annually. One of the benefits, as well as one of the challenges with our budget, is it's not all general fund. We have tax revenues. We have a 0.3% sales tax that funds both law enforcement, patrol, and some of the support services, as well as some of our evidence and detectives. We also have two 0.1% taxes that support the jail operations, as facilities and staffing. We also have a number of grants, both state and federal grants, that we utilize. So part of that depends on where the largest impact is. If we have a significant impact in our sales tax, then we're pretty conservative with the sheriff's office. In the entire time that I've been there, we have never been over budget. We always come in under budget, and we're very conservative. So going to the commissioners to ask for an increase if we were impacted negatively on the general fund, if we're impacted negatively on the general fund, that means the whole county's going to have been negatively impacted in the general fund. If it's sales tax, we do have a reserve there, and within the jail 1/10, we have a fairly large reserve. So I don't think I could sit here and say that I would do one or the other. It really is dependent on where the impact is. One of the first things I did when this whole thing started was have our staff run some models, run some scenarios. 15% reduction in revenues, 20% reduction in sales tax. We did some modeling so that we already have a plan. Should those things come to pass, we know where we can cut, we know how much we would have to cut, and we know, we actually have a plan so that we can leave unfilled positions unfilled. It just depends on where we're at.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move back to the commissioners, I believe, to the commissioner candidates, and I believe the first question goes to Commissioner O'Shaughnessy. Lodging tax collections and the use and distribution of those funds has been controversial over the years. Significant changes in that program have occurred to try to address those concerns. Do you support the current system of lodging tax use and distribution? If yes, why? And if not, why not? And what would you change?
All right, well, thank you for the question, and yes, this is always a hot topic. So I'll just start off by answering the simple question, which is I do support the current system. However, we're always looking for ways to tweak things where needed, and that's something that we have done since I've chaired that committee. An example of that is the development of the micro grants. One of the things I had heard as a commissioner from our community members was that the nonprofits and the small organizations felt that they were not fairly represented, and the work was excessive for them to receive smaller grant amounts. What we did was we worked together in a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, and we developed a micro grant program which has been very successful, and we're now seeing smaller entities utilize these funds for some of our wonderful events within the community, and they're groups that had never had access to those funds before. So that, in my book, is a real win for our community as a whole. The other thing, I talked about earlier on tonight was the great work our large capital grants can do. The building of the covered arena of the Washington State Forest Park probably would have never occurred had we never had this program in place. Kittitas County was able to leverage $1.5 million to grant to the Washington State Forest Park in the city of Cle Elum to ensure that the structure was a success, and that's something that I am very proud of. In addition to that, we have large capital grants which allow for wonderful programs. One of this is the wayfinding signs for the Yakima River Access Plan, which has received both national and state awards. We are now in the beginning of the implementation of this highly recognized plan, and so there has just been a tremendous amount of good work that's been done. Thank you.
Mr. Martens?
I will admit, this is an area that I am weak in. I don't know near enough about it. My first take on it is, over the 20 years that I have been here, nobody has been happy with the program. All stakeholders seem to have a problem with it. So my first take on this is maybe reassessing just exactly why the program's in place. As we get into that, we start looking at, all right, let's earmark where funds are supposed to be distributed, if it's targeted for a specific area, fine, we put that out, we make certain that those get cataloged first. As we move forward, we start looking at, it can't become the only mechanism for funding something. So we've got to make certain its purpose, its intent, and if it's actually doing what it's supposed to do. In most cases with a tax like that, you never have any way of monitoring what it's doing. In some cases it can provide good services like was just mentioned. In others, it's a penalty to somebody. So I would want to relook and reassess, probably come up with an option or an idea of just exactly what the program's supposed to do and then how we take it forward.
Thank you. Mrs. Carricker?
I think one of the biggest issues that I've heard about the lodging tax is that Upper County has felt very unrepresented when it comes to that tax and being able to get funds up here. Yes, we have heard that the horse arena is getting covered, but how much of that is used and utilized by Upper County individuals? Does it actually just promote and drive more events to Upper County? I think the big thing about it is listening to the individuals and seeing and making sure the percentage of that tax comes back to Upper County. And because you've got Katie, you've got the horse park, you've got the motels, and you've got the tourism that's being driven in Roslyn, how much of that money goes into Lower County versus Upper County? And how do we promote bringing money back into Upper County and funding those events, whether it be a micro grant, whether it be a capital grant, however it is, we need to make sure that the funds are being appropriated correctly as far as percentage-wise with Upper and Lower County. Thank you.
Can I rebut that for a moment?
I believe the rules allow for a 30-second rebuttal.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to clarify, because there was a lot of questions asked of not knowing where the funds were going. The only capital grant that has been funded at all in Kittitas County went to the city of Cleon and the Washington State Horse Park for $1.5 million. No other large-scale capital grants have been awarded, period. Secondly, the micro grants that have been established, most of the people that have utilized that have been from some of the smaller groups from the Upper County, and they have shared just how thrilled they are with that process. So I just wanted to let the group know. Thank you.
Can I review?
30-second rebuttal.
What's the percentage of Upper County getting as far as the large scale part of it? Because what groups are saying that they're appreciating? Because what I have heard is that they feel very underrepresented in that, and I understand there are a handful, but I would like to know of that, because what I've heard in the last few weeks is that they are underrepresented, period.
Okay, thank you. By the way, I don't think we mentioned the rebuttal at the very beginning. The rules do allow for a 30-second rebuttal, so when it's your turn, after you've responded to the question, if you would like to rebut someone else's response, please just catch the eye of the moderator. We'll make sure that you get called on.
Thank you.
I have no rebuttal to the lodging tax.
Thank you, Sheriff.
All right, so back to our sheriff candidates. Here's another question from today's live audience. What is your solution to the increasing need for substance abuse and mental health services in the jail? And Sheriff Myers, it's your turn to answer first.
I think that mental health and substance abuse are probably have some of the largest impacts on public safety, not just locally, but across our nation. And we continue to struggle with how we manage those. Our criminal justice system is set up very well to deal with crime. But I think that we tend to struggle significantly in trying to manage people with substance abuse and people with mental illness. We have initiated a couple of new programs there. One of them is medical assisted treatment. for substance abuse. We've also applied for and been selected to participate in a new program that takes a holistic approach of managing substance abuse and addiction while the individuals are in jail. And then the idea is to have a warm handoff to the services once they're released from jail. I think that, I can't give you numbers, but a significant amount of people get lost when they're released from jail, released from the programs in there that support them, and they're let out of jail and they don't have anywhere to go because their appointment isn't for 8 hours or until the next day. And they tend to migrate back to, to those familiar and comfortable places, and then they start the process all over. So the idea is that we're moving towards having them go from release directly into those support services and programs, with the hopes that we're going to, see a significant reduction in recidivism.
Thank you. Mr. Olson?
Yeah, I would like to see a mental health and substance abuse counselor assigned to every jail in the state. And I don't know if this is something that we need to petition legislatures on eventually. But throughout my career, I've seen people who have mental health problems. They typically want to self-medicate, and I think if they can be seen immediately upon entering a correctional facility, I think we can greatly influence how we can treat that person and how we can prevent them from coming back to the jail, and prevent the deputies and other law enforcement from having to recontact them down the road. So getting them the opportunity to be seen immediately, I think that could have a great effect on then where we can divert them to, which programs to divert them to, which there are great programs currently going on, and they've been increasing over years within jails. So diversion programs, recommendations by law enforcement to such programs, even if someone doesn't necessarily go to the correctional facility, but we've made contact with them on the side of the road or in a house of some sort, then if we can prevent that person from coming to the jail at some point, we need to work hand in hand with mental health counselors and substance abuse counselors.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir?
Just as a point of clarification, we do contract and have mental health professionals in the jail. We have comprehensive mental health. We do a mental health screening for every inmate when they do come in, and that screening is then handed off directly to a mental health counselor who begins a program with those individuals.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the commissioners, and I believe Mr. Martens, it's your turn to go first. Many of our small businesses have been significantly hurt during the current pandemic and the resulting economic recession. What will you do to support them during this time, and how will you continue to do so during your time in office if elected?
Count me one of those as having been impacted by the COVID-19 response. Our business has been down significantly. My take on this is we've got to get regulation out of the way. A lot of businesses are going to have to pull back into their own homes. They're going to have to pull back to their personal properties because they can't afford to stay alive in a commercial setting or something like that. Our regulations have pretty much restricted much of that from happening. So the first place where a county commissioner can start making a difference is looking at regulations and making certain that they're supportive of the community as opposed to restrictive of the community. One of the points that I'm looking at right now is we have allowed uses within our code, the zoning code. I think that should be disallowed uses. If you own a 5 or a 20-acre piece of property, why should you restrict it from operating a small business out of there? It just makes sense that we provide the avenue for small businesses to thrive instead of penalizing them because they might want to work out of their own home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martens. Mrs. Carricker.
Wonderful question, and one of the reasons, actually the reason that I was led to throw my hat in the ring for running for county commissioner for Kittitas County. Right now, more than ever, we need elected officials who will stand up for our constitutionally protected rights, who are willing to put principles above politics, and they're willing to go out and to clarify that mandates are not law. Ultimately, I'm from a logging family. I've seen what the spotted owl did mandate-wise and computer modeling to an entire industry that not only destroyed families, but also destroyed a private sector and ended up causing mega fires in our forests while we import timber from other countries. It was unrealistic. We need to be working with our legislative, we need to be working with our businesses around our communities, and we need to be standing up for them and being willing to say, hey, sometimes it's okay to put principles above politics and be willing to voice. There's a small business in Ellensburg who on July 1st I walked in and they had a sign that said, by law, mask mandated. 4 days later after talking to them, that sign now says, by mandate. We need clarification and we need a concise plan. And we need to be able to openly communicate with them. We need to also show the businesses support right now. I have watched government agencies, our own county commissioners, stand up and support social movements on social media, but not stand up for the businesses that were rallying and crying, saying that they needed help, they needed to see leadership, and that's what I'll do as your county commissioner. I'll stand alongside you and I will listen and I will fight for your constitutionally protected rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Shaughnessy?
I'm going to ask for you to repeat the question.
Sure. Many small businesses have been significantly hurt because of the current pandemic and the resulting economic recession. What will you do to support them during this time, and how will you continue to do so during your time in office if elected?
Okay, thank you for that. That's a great question, and there's a couple of things the Board of County Commissioners have done and continue to do. The first of which is dedicated funds through the CARES Act funding to go specifically to our small businesses. In addition to that, we have been communicating to the state as a county regularly to press the state to bring back local control. I took this to the next level by rallying all of the counties from across the state of Washington together in a movement to be able to have conversations and develop a message which we could then present in a united fashion to the governor, which strongly stated that he needs to give back our local control. These are the types of things that I will continue to do. I will continue to find legal ways to make a point and to bring, to be a voice for our people. And I'll look for financial resources to help assist small businesses and families who are employed by small businesses the means to be successful in their lives here in Kittitas County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mrs. Carricker, did you have a?
I can rebut, but you can.
Okay, Mr. Martens.
First off, I would like to talk about the CARES Act. $2.5 million was earmarked for that, of which only $300,000 went to private enterprise. So if the county's not being impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe more should go to the businesses. Secondly, the county commissioners can immediately look at regulations and start reacting to the restrictions that are in place, hurting businesses from using their own land. So I would recommend that, that's the first place that I would go to at that point.
Thank you. Did you have a rebuttal, Mrs. Carricker?
I do. As far as the $2.5 million for CARES Act funding, which our commissioners did sign off on because we needed that when we did the variance application, they also signed off and agreed that Dr. Larson could have 25% of that CARES Act funding from every municipality and from the county. But that was money that was allocated for our residents in Kittitas County. He wanted 25%, which was over $800,000 to fund the Department of Health, because we needed that in a time of crisis for COVID-19 for our residents. But in the last 3 or so weeks, we have been bringing up people from Yakima County to have health received in our hospital at KVH. So money allocated for Kittitas County is being spent on other people in our community.
I'm going to read that back, if I may.
30 seconds?
Yes, so I did ask a clarifying question because I had heard rumors of that. And the only money that's being spent of the county's CARES Act funding that I have been made aware of is funding that is the case contact work that's being done if somebody works in Kittitas County or has came into contact with people in Kittitas County that are residents of Yakima County. So the hospital accusation, I have yet to hear that be an accurate statement that CARES Act funding has been used for that.
May I rebuke that?
I believe the rules only allow for a 30-second rebuttal. However, you are the first person to get the next question, and you can certainly take part of your time to rebut it at that time. I believe that's all for the commissioners.
All right, back to our sheriff candidates. And so I thought I'd jump down the list since we talked about masking a little bit in that last dialogue there. As you know, the governor has mandated that businesses require all patrons to wear masks or they'll be denied service. Do you agree with that order? And if the state were to call on sheriffs to enforce the order, would you do it? And I believe, yes, Mr. Olson's turn to go first this time.
Well, first off, I think the governor's order to wear masks is very good public safety requirement. I have a lot of elderly people in my life, friends, family, that are very worried about catching COVID, and so I definitely respect their rights. I think of having businesses, early on, I know Costco was one of the businesses that made masks mandatory to get inside the building, and I did not have an issue with that. As law enforcement, it would be very difficult to try and be enforcing masks in going to private businesses and stores, and I think law enforcement needs to spend their time working on the actual real criminal matters, going out there, preventing crimes, solving crimes, and I think education and educating the public, for safety, it's very smart. We should be doing it when possible. If we can't maintain social distancing, then we should wear masks. So I'm not in support of law enforcement being the person to solve enforcement for that. Thank you.
Sheriff?
Thank you. There's a significant amount of controversy over what's considered criminal law and what's considered public health law or rules or mandates. Even though there's a large amount of controversy over the governor's authority to impose mandates, there's a law that authorizes it. There's also a law that states that law enforcement shall enforce. Where the sheriff has discretion and uses that discretion is the level of enforcement. So the answer is yes, we do regulate those, we do enforce those, but we enforce those at an education level. Just as we enforce many infractions and low-level crimes at an education level. Enforcement should always be conducted at the lowest possible level. What you're looking for is voluntary compliance. We're not here to manage and control people. We're here to support and protect people. That's our mission. And so we always try to use education first. It's that verbal warning you get when you didn't turn your turn signal on or you didn't wear your seatbelt. And so we try to get compliance that way. So I guess the long way around the barn there is that, yes, we do enforce it, but we do it at the lowest possible level.
Rebuttal?
I just want to add to that is, we're fortunate in Kittitas County as far as the sheriff goes and enforcement of this, is most of the businesses occur within city limits. So we would have to be involved with the city police, and if they at some point needed some kind of backup for enforcement, if they decided to do enforcement, then by all means we would be there to support them. But as far as county goes, I definitely agree that education and recommendation is it's a very strong word, is the best way to handle it.
Great, thanks.
Okay, back to the commissioners. Let's stay on the same vein as far as the current COVID-19 pandemic. Commissioners, if elected, you will serve as one member of 5 of the Kittitas County Board of Health. As you know, the Board of County Commissioners makes up 3 of the 5 members of the Board of Health, thereby the majority. With that in mind, how do you think Kittitas County Public Health has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic? What would you have done differently, if anything? What do you think the future of Kittitas County Public Health should be or look like if elected?
I'm going to first go with the rebuttal on the statement of not knowing where 25% of our CARES Act went. That's my issue with the Board of County Commissioners' current leadership. They have no problem signing off on variances without doing their due diligence to know exactly how that money that was allocated for residents in our county is being spent. When someone asks how 25% of the money that was to protect our businesses and our residents, and they're not sure how it's being spent, but it went to the Department of Health, that's not acceptable. I really believe that we answered initially correctly. COVID-19 is real. It's here. We all know it's here. Unfortunately, we have mainstream media that's terrifying, and right now, we are struggling with leadership in our county because I asked, why does Kittitas County have its own state emergency or its own county emergency when Governor Inslee had his own emergency as well? So we had a 2-fold state of emergency in Kittitas County. I asked Dr. Larson that directly. He chose to disengage in responding to me. I never got a response from him when I asked him to clarify what it meant to have a state of an emergency. So I did a public disclosure request. I asked for his email records so that I could see why I never got a response. He replied to Casey Knudsen and said, I'm disengaging from Jessica. Would you please respond? She said 10-4. He said thank you. I never got a response. I then went to the Board of Health chairman, which is Commissioner Waxsmith. I asked for clarification as to why it was acceptable that we had people that weren't even elected but appointed by the Board of Health not being willing to engage with the community. It took over 2 weeks for me to get a reply as to why. And if you go and you watch Dr. Larson's live feed or his YouTube video on Monday, he answers the question as to why, because he finally realized that we need to be open and communicating with our residents of this county. If you're not willing to sit and talk and explain why we're doing what we're doing, then yes, we need to revamp how we are leading in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Shaughnessy?
I was just going to state, after all of that, the statement about the money going to the Department of Health is different than the statement about the beds in the hospital. So it's kind of like apples and oranges, what we were talking about there. So I just wanted to make sure that we knew that we were talking about 2 different things from what we just heard from what my statement was earlier. The CARES Act funding to the Department of Health goes to all things, including contact tracing, ensuring we have the testing supplies, ensuring we have the resources necessary to continue to move forward in the phases, which is why Kittitas County is at phase 3, because we have made sure we have the resources in place to support small businesses, to get the doors open so that we can, again, be healthy both physically and economically, and we are moving in that direction. Am I supposed to, well, oh, I was rebutting the rebuttal, sorry. As far, can you repeat the rest of the question?
Yes, I'll try to do so quickly. How do you think Kittitas County Public Health has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic? What would you have done differently, if anything? And what do you think the future of Kittitas County Public Health should be or look like if elected?
Thank you. So COVID-19 is something that was new to everyone across the entire globe. Nobody's done this before. Everybody's doing the best that they can at the time that they have the best information. When we have new information, we do better. That's how it works. We continue to learn more, we continue to do better, and we're all working diligently to ensure that we are providing a safe community, not only economically, not only mentally and socially, but really a community where we can all continue to move forward and go into the next phases past where we're at today with COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martens?
Thank you. And again, I agree that COVID-19 is something that blindsided everybody. Nobody was prepared to react to it. My concern is the reaction. At the county level, we had 3 elected officials on that health board. Those elected officials never reached out to anyone. I would have expected the health department to be directed to not only fight the pandemic and set the conditions and things moving forward, but to be reaching out to our private citizens and especially our businesses that, you know, we're going to get through this. How are you guys going to open up? And here's our suggestion. If we could have been working with those businesses instead of relying on the Chamber of Commerce to send us the information all the time, you might, or the commissioners may have had a much better handle on what was happening to their private sector. So from my end, I think there was a lack of leadership, a lack of reaction at the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, back to our sheriff candidates. This time Sheriff Myers will answer first. What is the single largest issue, law enforcement issue in Kittitas County, and how will you proactively address it?
That's a hard question to just single one thing out. So many of our law enforcement and public safety issues are influenced by many things. I think the largest thing we're facing right now would have to be combination part, it's our location and growth. In other words, we look at the crime rate in Kittitas County, we look at the type of crimes that we have, and then we look at our violent crime. And so violent crime, to me, is the most significant thing. Whether it's domestic violence or gang-related assaults or drug-related activities. And 3 out of our last 5 homicides were gang-related. And they were connected out of county. So it's that influx of crime that comes from the other side of our county borders. And the strongest thing that we can do is have a consistent enforcement plan within our county amongst all of our law enforcement agencies, and we work very hard to do that. Addressing gang activity, because that's the bulk of our violent crime, that's the bulk of our homicides. And so I'd say that's probably the primary thing, and what we're doing to combat that is to have a unified enforcement plan. We have ramped up our gang intelligence. We're working with both regional and state enforcement as well as the feds in intel and developing enforcement strategies so that we can address this before it becomes the kind of problem that we're seeing in our neighboring counties. We need to keep those from being established here.
Thank you. Mr. Olson?
I would say the probably single most important thing affecting law enforcement has to do with drugs, and what spurs off of that are the drug-related crimes that come with it. Burglaries, the thefts in small businesses, and then the fraud. And, so my goal as the sheriff would be to basically build the network of all the local law enforcement agencies, which I have not seen be done in recent years, and it would include the state patrol, every local city agency, the county sheriff's department. I would want to invite up Yakima Police and Yakima Sheriff's Office because as I've seen in my career, a lot of crimes that are committed in our county come from that neighboring county. They do come from as well as King County, but I think getting the partners together and building our network and information sharing is very important, and I think it's a good way of preventing burglaries in our county, and then using the substance abuse counselors to help these people get off of the drugs so they're not having to commit crimes and spend more money on the drugs. So that's what I believe is the single most issue, and it affects everybody.
Great, thank you very much, Sheriff. Rebuttal?
The chiefs and the sheriff meet twice or every 2 weeks to discuss strategic plans to address crime. The law enforcement CEOs, which are the chiefs, the state agencies, the federal agencies, and the local agencies and their command staff meet every month. We host that meeting. Again, to do the same thing, to discuss and develop strategies for addressing crime in our county. The investigators within our county meet every month. That's hosted by the Ellensburg Police Department, and they unilaterally work narcotics cases. They just completed cases, together. They pool those resources. They just completed cases both in Clallam and in the city of Kittitas.
Thank you. We have another rebuttal? Sure.
Yes, sir. So being the local sergeant in Ellensburg, I represented Ellensburg, part of the state patrol. And during my time there, I would receive contact from people within the county, and one in specific, this gentleman had his tractor stolen, and he called to know what the state patrol was doing to help find his tractor. And I had to inform him I knew nothing about this, and that's a pretty serious crime, very important to this guy. And so that information sharing is something that's been lacking, and I think it's very important. It's something I would want to do and be able to share information to possibly solve a crime, prevent crime.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the commissioners. Let's switch gears a little bit, talk about a different issue. I'm sure we'll get back to COVID-19 and the pandemic and the economic recession as it's consuming most of our lives on a moment-to-moment basis. But let's talk about something a little different. Wildland fire poses a major risk to large areas of our county, which is made worse by the current health of the forest, especially on public lands, where many areas have been stressed by drought and severely damaged by disease. As commissioner, what would you do to protect the residents and communities from the risks of wildland fire, and what would you do to address forest health and improve overall environmental outcomes? And I believe Commissioner O'Shaughnessy, it's your turn to go first.
Well, this is a subject I know a lot about. As you all heard earlier on, I have my red card to fight wildland fires when need be, and I've been a firefighter for the Roslyn Fire Department over the last 12 years. In my commissioner role, there's a wide varieties of ways that we can support this effort. One of the efforts is the TREPS program, which is ran through the Fire Adapted Communities, which brings together all agencies. I think probably most of you have heard all hands, all lands, and that's an approach where wildfire doesn't know boundaries. So these programs bring together the DNR, the local fire agencies, as well as the U.S. Forest Service in a collaborative effort to start to do prescribed work in our forests, because our forests aren't healthy. They haven't been managed the way they should be, and fire is something that is natural here within our county, in our community, and it's something that we are slowly and carefully reintroducing to the land. On another note, I've also been working very diligently with stakeholders to try to work on building a 20-year contract with the U.S. Forest Service to create that certainty of supply to bring a small diameter mill to the Clallam area. That will not only help have sustainable forests, it'll create a more diverse economy for our community, and it'll just be a win-win for our community. So a lot of work to be done, a lot of work is currently going on, and I think there's a really bright future ahead of us here in Kittitas County. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martens?
Thank you. The first thing of significance is everyone has to understand that only 14% of this county can be developed. The rest of it is encumbered in some way, shape, or form by federal, state, tribal. There's a whole array of different people that own land in Kittitas County. But on the private side, it's only about 14% that we control. So as you're going through that process, you understand that the federal government, state government, tribal interests, all of these things are a huge part of what will eventually be a solution. 2 years ago, we approached Commissioner Kittitas, and at the time, she didn't even know what a small diameter sawmill was. Through education, she has been actively involved in that, and yes, I support her efforts at this point, but it's going to take an awful lot to get past the obstacles that are in place to get all of these different elements in order so that the small diameter sawmill becomes a reality. What can we do at the county level? Immediately, we should be looking at traffic patterns. We've got to put new roads in here. We just went through a 20-year comp plan update. Do I need to go louder or no? Okay. Anyhow, we just went through a 20-year comp plan update where no new roads or anything else was identified. We have got to find traffic patterns that we can turn around and make certain get put in place in the near term, so if a wildland fire comes in, we have the means to move people in direction away from the fire. Right now, we've got too many one-way roads in different places. We're not going to get around that. We're in a mountainous area. We have to provide the transportation corridors, the infrastructure, and the other needs to make that happen, and that's something we can do at the county level.
Thank you, Mr. Martens. I apologize. I was trying to find a way to discreetly scratch my nose. And I was trying not to get your attention, and obviously it backfired on me, so I apologize. Okay, Mrs. Carricker. You'll get your rebuttal at the end.
Okay.
I saw you.
Okay.
Well, if there's one thing I enjoy talking about, it's our national forests and our wildlands. Ultimately, we need a regulation rollback. And when you say that the forests haven't been managed, it's been decades, almost 30 years, over 30 years now. Unfortunately, with the Spotted Owl agenda in the 80s, where they got put on the Endangered Species Act, that created a bunch of regulations that didn't allow our forests to be properly managed. Think of a forest as a large garden. You wouldn't let your garden get overgrown with weeds, because then you're not going to have a healthy garden for your tomatoes, your vegetables, whatever you may be growing. So as far as bringing back logging to our area, we really need to be focusing on that and to deregulate how our logging is being done, because what we do have going on logging-wise in our communities isn't mostly our local logging businesses. They cannot afford to go through the regulation process or the time. We bring in companies from the west side or from up north that comes in. That money that they get from those timber sales doesn't come back into Kittitas County. It actually goes to whatever county that those businesses are in. So how do we promote the small logging businesses in our communities to be tending to our forests? As far as protecting residents and the communities, we need to be promoting Firewise, which thankfully Upper Kittitas County does a really good job with. If you look at the percentage of where our heavily forest area is, it's Upper Kittitas County versus Lower County. As far as having Lower County, we saw Taylor Bridge Fire and what winds can do with whipping through fires and traveling them very fast through sagebrush. Ultimately, we need regulation rollback, we need to promote Firewise, and we need to bring an economy back into Upper Kittitas County that has potentially like coal mining and like timber, so that we can promote healthy forests and our healthy economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Shaughnessy, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Thank you. Two things, one of which there was a statement made that Mr. Martens was the educator that informed me about the small diameter mills. That is not accurate. In 2016, when I was appointed, I worked very closely with the Nature Conservancy in an effort to do the legwork to find whether that was something that could work in our community. It's found that it was with the 20-year contract from the U.S. Forest Service, which is what I am working on today. And as far as the infrastructure goes, the current Kittitas County road plan for the 20-year road plan has, with my direction and enthusiasm, has created a loop road which connects two dead ends in Upper County. The end of the road up at Lake Lealum at Samlisac and the Teanaway Community Forest, both two dead ends going to be joined together in a loop. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, back to our sheriff candidates. Here comes the question that I'm sure you knew was going to be coming. In the wake of all the Black Lives Matter movement, there's been calls for police reform in various ways, including, of course, defunding the police, but also things like banning certain defensive actions like chokeholds and getting in the way of purchasing surplus military equipment. There is traction in both Washington, D.C. and Olympia to move forward with some police reforms. So, as sheriff, what, if any, police reform ideas do you support? And Mr. Olson, you get the floor first.
Could you just repeat the question one more time?
Sure, I started with a lot of context, but the bottom line question is, what, if any, police reform measures would you support?
Well, I believe police reform is going to be coming one way or another, and I think some of that training that we will see, and I've attended before, is racial bias training. It was very good training, and the gentleman that put the class on, I mean, he opened a lot of eyes, and there was actually several deputies that were at that training and other law enforcement agencies, and so I found it to be very beneficial. I do support some kind of police reform within a certain means. During my career, I have seen we've gotten training in crisis intervention training to deal with basically people who have had maybe some mental issues of some sort, whether it's a traumatic brain injury or they have an autism spectrum disorder. And I have seen our uses of forces go down considerably when we have that training. So police reform and doing some training, it's not a bad thing, and I think it's something that we can embrace, and it makes officers safer, it can make our community safer. I think some of the police reform that maybe wants to happen, defunding police should not be an option. I think there's a way we can make officers better and have more accountability within departments, and that's how I see. I see having strong policies, procedures in place that get enforced is a great way to start with police reform right there. So that would be my goal as sheriff, is just make sure those policies and procedures are strong, that they're followed, and that we give the training necessary to make officers bias trained and better informed. Thank you.
Sheriff?
One of the first things I did when I was appointed sheriff was to change the business model and the structure of the sheriff's office. I sought out the smartest person that I could find, the one with the most integrity, and the one that had almost opposing views to mine. And I appointed him as a compliance officer in my command staff. His job is to ensure that we are doing things the right way, especially with respect to policy and training, especially in areas of use and force and bias policing. Those are two of the top priorities. I agree that police reform is important and should happen. It should happen all the time. Law enforcement is an evolution. As long as our society changes, which it does, as long as the laws change, which they do, we need to continually change with it. We need to try to change ahead of it to be prepared for it. We've done that very well in this community, especially with the sheriff's office. We have very solid policies. We have a solid mission statement that leads off with treat all people, everybody. There's nothing in there about gender, race, anything like that. The law enforcement should be applied equally. With respect to training, we've mandated that all of our deputies, and they have received bias-based policing. They've all received training in recognizing mental illness and addressing mental illness. Those are just core things that we have to do. With respect to defunding, we've been saying for years that law enforcement is not qualified to deal with mentally ill people in crisis or with drug addiction. So take those away and give them to somebody who is qualified, and take all of the money that you gave us to do that. No money. We were given those responsibilities. We weren't given funding to do those. So I agree with police reform. It's a continuing thing, and we do it. Thank you.
Rebuttal?
Yeah, I just want to follow up. He talked about having a compliance officer within the sheriff's office, and to me, I think that at every point in a department, from the reserve deputy all the way to the top, everybody should be in compliance. We should all be doing what is right and what is required of the law and what is required of policy. That's all.
Thanks.
So both of the previous candidates mentioned mental health. Let's stick with that for a minute. Mr. Martens, I believe it's your opportunity. Do you support imposing the 0.1% mental health sales tax that's available for the Board of County Commissioners to implement councilmatically? If so, why do you support it and how would you spend it?
First off, I do not support it. I think it's a redistribution of the tax base that is now going away from what the county is taxed through property taxes and the other things that we have had in the past, and we're redistributing that now to a sales tax base. I can't see going in that direction. Now, mental health, absolutely. We've got to come up with a better way to start addressing the issues because they're not going away. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, it's still there. Educated, uneducated, it is still an issue. So we've got to find a way to come with a better package. We need to look at it from a community-wide basis and find out what we're going to do, because I don't think anyone has a clear idea of how to address this issue. From my end, I think we start at the schools. If we can address kids coming out of school that have problems, we need to start helping them. So I think it's an issue that we as a community have got to address, but to fund it through something separate like that is the wrong mechanism for the people, the citizens of the county.
Thank you. Mrs. Carricker, same question?
I support the 1/10 of 1% tax, which is probably surprising for some people when you think of me saying that I don't want to continue to grow government entity goes. However, mental health falls under substance abuse and it falls under homelessness. Washington State is ranked 45th in the nation for addressing mental health issues. In our Kittitas County alone, we're seeing a rise in homeless population. If you look at the services that we provide in Upper County for residents up here, you have one location where you can go for mental health to get prescriptions, and that's KBH. There's no other place that you can go to get prescriptions if you need it. If you need Aspen, if you need other kind of services like that, you have to go down to Lower County to get that. If you look at what we provide as far as transportation and infrastructure for folks that need to get from point A to point B, say it's to a mental health appointment, say that you now are able to go down and live in affordable housing in Ellensburg because we don't have it up in Cle Elum, but your livelihood, your friends, everyone up here, but you don't have a vehicle to travel in, you can't get up in the evenings because Hope Source doesn't have transportation. That's the only real form of transportation we have. Mental health, substance abuse, homelessness, it all goes hand in hand. Our county doesn't have the services that we need to provide for it, and in 1/10 of 1%, when we pass levies, when we see rises in property taxes, when we see all these other taxes happening in our county, and we are 45th in the nation for addressing this as a state. As a county, we can be better than, and at 1/10 of 1%, folks, is really not that much when you think about we need to be protecting the residents in our county and offering them services that we just simply do not offer in Upper Kittitas County right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Shaughnessy?
Yes. So I both personally and professionally support the 1/10 of 1% sales tax. However, I do not believe I do not support, nor do I believe the Kittitas County Board of Commissioners should be imposing any tax on the citizens of Kittitas County. It is of my belief that this, whether it's mental health or another tax, should go to the vote of the people. And at that time, the people can decide whether this is a tax they want to support to help and improve the mental health in our community, or if this is something they want to address another way. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, back to our sheriff candidates. This is a very short question. What is your position on cooperating with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, otherwise known as ICE?
Next question. Those are governed by law. In other words, it's another area where we kind of run into state law and federal law conflicting. But with respect to, detainers and things of that, the federal law says that directs us to cooperate with federal law enforcement. Congress has deemed ICE to be a federal law enforcement entity. However, state law has placed some restrictions on how and where we can provide that cooperation. So I know that recently King County was being pretty heavily criticized for releasing our fugitive that we now have in custody for homicide and not supporting an ICE detainer. They were following the law. In other words, it would have been a violation for them to turn him over to the ICE in the manner that the agents put that detainer in. And so I think that there's ways, and we have been utilizing those ways, that we can still accomplish public safety with respect to our inmates, but yet not run crossways with federal administrative laws. And that's what immigration is. It's a federal administrative law. It's not a state law. And so if we keep that into perspective, we can accomplish public safety.
Thank you. Mr. Olson?
Yeah, I made some notes because I figured this would be a question that would probably come up. So, it's supporting ICE. It's a federal law enforcement office, and as a law enforcement, we do have an obligation to support the individual officers in the field on certain matters. And then we have an obligation to ensure that the civil rights of every person we contact is also protected. Our community is best served when we ensure the protection of both of them. And one of the things we have to do is we have an obligation to respect those judicial processes, even when they are federal. As far as the criminal warrants, I definitely believe that's any criminal matter involving immigration customs enforcement. We need to always support them. Like Clay said, is on the immigration infraction, more or less, that's something that law enforcement has a right, has a duty because of state law to not get involved with that. So the illegal people, or the people who commit illegal crimes and are in our country illegally, we do have a right to hold them accountable. And anybody who commits a crime, they need to be held accountable. So I know there's many hardworking, law-abiding, undocumented people in our community who have become important figures in our community. But if they or anyone do step in, as a sheriff's office, we need to be involved and charge them accordingly.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, back to the commissioners. I believe, Mrs. Carricker, this is your opportunity to answer first. We have an audience question that I'm going to ask at this time. Home prices continue to skyrocket countywide. What are some of the steps that you would take as commissioner to help improve affordability for homes in the county?
Reread that again, sorry.
What are some of the steps that you would take as commissioner to help improve the affordability of homes in the county?
I think that's going to be a pretty tough one because you can cut back on the cost of building homes, you can expedite the cost and time it is to put a well in or to buy a water right. What we need to be looking at, and it's something that is a Kittitas County code, is we no longer have the ability to build mobile home parks. That's a code that restricts that. And unfortunately, 4 years ago, a handful of commissioners purchased shady acres without any of those families being able to go anywhere. And because there's no place in the code in Kittitas County for any other mobile home park to happen. That's a stepping stone. Some folks that want to be able to retire, if you look at Arizona, they've made a ton of money on mobile home parks because they're affordable and people can retire in them. It's also a great starting point for families that are just starting out to buy their own mobile home, buy their own spot, and to be able to build. There's a lot of restriction when it comes to that. And we're a bedroom community of King County, and ultimately we're going to have to figure out how to bypass that, and at the same time take some of that money that we get off of water rights that the county profits off of and reinvest it back into our communities, because our infrastructure currently lacks drastically. You've got Bullfrog Flats that is growing like crazy, yet we're not compensating for school this fall. As those places continue to grow and as people continue to move into our valley, we don't have school infrastructure set up, we don't have the grocery centers set up for it, we don't have the roads, the sidewalks, we don't have a community center for kids. How do we reinvest that money that's coming back in here to make it so that we're bringing industry in here so that people can afford to live in Kittitas County, so that we improve infrastructure, and so that we can be a community that people want to live in and can afford to live in? Thank you.
Commissioner O'Shaughnessy, same question.
Thank you. So there are a number of ways I've been working on this over the last 4 years. There's been a learning curve, and there's been a lot of frustration. I would say the Growth Management Act is not our friend in Kittitas County. It creates a lot of challenges, and I have plans, and I've been working with Senator Warnick on proposing bills which will amend the Growth Management Act to create affordable housing in the rural areas of the county by allowing there to actually be accessory dwelling units. That is something that is completely absurd that those are not allowed within our county at this time, and that is due to the Growth Management Act. So I'm looking to change the state's requirements to bring those into our community and other GMA communities. In addition to this, I have been working with our planning director to come up with a method to have a set group of plans in place so that there's approved plans that people could choose from when wanting to build a home in Kittitas County with different sizes in mind. So it may be a small home, a medium-sized home, and a large home, and those plans are already drawn by architects, and so that's an expense that the person going into the county doesn't have to take on. It's already done for them, and it reduces the overall cost in the building of their home. Thank you.
Mr. Martens.
The county has a lot more ability than they want to acknowledge. Growth management, I don't agree with it, but it's the law of the land at this point. Now we have to figure out how to work within the law of the land. There are numerous things that the Act allows us to try to do. I disagree with ADUs can't be used under the Growth Management Act. ADUs are not allowed in rural areas, because I know that they are. They're being done in other areas all of the times. But what we need to do is start looking at what we can do. There's sub-area planning. You look up at Snoqualmie Pass, and most of the issues that are faced in the rest of our rural county aren't addressed up there because there's a sub-area plan. Suncadia is a sub-area plan. Why aren't we doing that in Thorpe, and Ronald, and Vantage? All of these other areas could be accomplished under a sub-area plan. Growth management requires that the infrastructure be put in place before you actually add density, okay? That's where a sub-area plan comes in. It starts addressing those deficiencies so that growth can go in there. We can get into smaller lots. It's happening across the rest of the state. We just have to get into the 21st century.
Thank you.
Okay, back to our sheriff candidates. As you both know, the jail is under the scope of the sheriff, and you'll have ultimate direction over that. One of the issues we've seen in both prisons and down in Yakima County is COVID-19 outbreaks, which is a real difficult thing to manage because you have a lot of people in close habitation. What would be your strategy to dealing with a fairly large-scale COVID-19 outbreak in the Kittitas County Jail? And I believe it's Mr. Olson's turn.
Well, I think the first thing, and it may be taking place at the jail, I haven't been there in a long time. Anyway, I think checking inmates as they are brought in, checking their temperature, asking them questions, doing all the healthcare checks when they first come in. The jail has, I believe, approximately 90 inmates in it on average, and there's about 209 beds in the facility. So if there's an outbreak in there, obviously we've been involved the health officers and doctors in the area. But I think isolating those people in individual beds and doing as good as we can to isolate them, get them the health care that they need. And then obviously officers already are believe wearing masks in there and being as safe as they can. So if there's a large outbreak, we'd have to talk to the courts as well, find out is there a way that maybe some people could do some electronic home monitoring, be isolated that way and serve their sentence or their jail time somewhere else. Certain inmates are not going to be able to be released. They're going to have to be incarcerated, and we're just going to have to do the best we can to isolate them until they're safe.
Thank you. Sheriff Myers?
We were one of the first jails to develop a strategic plan in response to the COVID-19. We made some immediate changes, such as we house the chain, so it's the prisoner transport. We moved that transport off-site. We instituted some alternatives to booking to reduce our inmate population. We are utilizing all of our alternatives to booking that we have at our disposal. We developed a plan in conjunction with our Department of Mental Health and our mental health doctor, not our mental health, I'm sorry, our public health doctor and the incident management team. Those plans were approved. Portions of the plans can't be discussed because it's a jail. We set up isolation and zones within the jail. One of the challenges that we have there is we don't have negative air cells. We're literally just secured some funding and are in the process right now of having some of that corrected and some of that put in place. So depending on the size of the outbreak, we have plans where we can isolate people, plans where we can move people. When people come in, we're already quarantining them together in a separate area. We also have the plans to address impacts on staff because we know that we're going to lose some staff. Staff are going to be have to be pushed into quarantine, so we have plans in place for that as well.
Sir?
Yeah, I just want to add, so I know early on during COVID, the Sheriff's Office also decided not to use they didn't want any other agencies to come in and use the breath testing machine for DUI subjects. And it's the only DUI area that we had to process a DUI was at the Kittitas County Jail. And I do know that they did research and they found out from our breath test section folks that it wasn't an issue. If somebody had COVID, they were in the BAC taking a test, it was not going to affect the rest of the jail. And anyway, it caused some heartache as far as other agencies went and trying to process DUIs. Eventually State Patrol got one out the office. Thank you.
It did cause some problems, but we worked through it, and we haven't had any infections in our jail.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Okay, back to the commissioners. I think we've had enough controversial items, so let's turn to something a little easier. Let's talk about water. As you know, the drought relief pumping plant project up at Lake Kittitas has gotten a lot of attention recently and has been somewhat controversial because it affects primarily the area and the residents and the homeowners around Lake Kittitas. And it has caused some people to oppose that project. But that project is only one component of a much more complex 30-year strategy to develop additional water supply and to create drought sustainability in the greater Yakima River Basin. The plan is known as the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan. Do you support the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan? Yes or no, and why or why not?
To me?
No, actually, I'm sorry. I was looking right at you, Mr.
I
Martins.
noticed that.
This time, it's Commissioner O'Shaughnessy's turn to go first. I apologize.
Okay, so the yes or no part, that piece, although question pieces of the plan, I do support the plan overall, and I will share with you why. I support the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan because this plan is looking into the future to ensure that we have economic sustainability within the Yakima Basin. Without the water that the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan provides, we'd have farmers not only in Kittitas County, but in Yakima County that would go bankrupt. We'd probably see dry, arid lands that would no longer be able to be farmed, and the economy in our communities would take a huge hit. In addition to the farms, this also has an ecological benefit. This helps the reintroduction or the reestablishment of some of the fish species that have been threatened in our communities, such as the bull trout as well as salmon. And this is something that the tribes in our community, the irrigators in our community, the cities in our community, as well as the Board of County Commissioners and our state legislators have all worked together on and have had to make some hard decisions on where compromises are going to be made for this plan to be successful. But this is an excellent example of when you collaborate with a wide variety of stakeholders, the good work that can ultimately be done in the end. And that's what this accomplishes for us, is sustaining our economy through the consistent availability of water and also ensuring that we are able to maintain and sustain a healthy habitat. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martins?
The short answer is yes, I support the plan. Do I like it? No. When you turn around and, well, let's put it this way. A plan is better than no plan. But you still have who's paying for the plan and who's penalized by the plan. So when you look at Kittitas County, the citizens of our county have paid $6.5 million for water purchases. When new people come in to use, or any new use, they're now paying again to backfill that. But that $6.5 million went out towards existing uses, which is something that I think the government got completely off on. They turned around and they created the situation and then penalized the rest of the citizens to satisfy the needs of senior water holders. That's behind us. Where are we going to go from here? What's our future going to look like? The Yakima Integrated Plan is a plan that will move us forward. It's addressing irrigation. It's addressing all of those issues. Now, it's creating issues like up at Kittitas. I think they've got a plan to work that through, but again, it's impacting some of those landowners up there that thought they had a recreational piece of property, and now all of a sudden that reservoir is a reservoir, what it was intended for. So transparency, accountability, all of these things become part of that package. And what we have to do is look at what's best for our citizens and how we move forward so that we do have economic development, we do have water for the future. So yes, I support it, but with reservations.
Thank you. Mrs. Carricker?
Whether I support it or not, there's no way to really roll back, because ultimately that plan was to get us out of litigation so we could move forward. We made compromises that, no, I don't agree with. Do I agree that we just needed to not continue to spend money because we were in a lawsuit that was going on for years with no end in sight? Ultimately, what it comes down to is that if you want to buy property in Kittitas County, you are going to be restricted to a zone. You're going to be in a zone where you may or may not be able to buy water rights. And if you don't have water rights and you don't want to buy from a private entity, you can buy from the county. So the county continues to like to profit off of people being able to build their homes here without having a concise plan of what they're doing with that money that's received by the county for water rights. We need to be creating programs and directing revenue to benefit the individuals, farms and ranches, builders and developers, and the community as a whole. There are no such programs while the county profits off the ability of people to be able to grow and build their families here in Kittitas County. And as Mr. Martens said, it's over $6 million. That money goes into the general fund, and we still haven't seen it go back in the communities where we could be, instead of talking about a 1/10 of a 1% mental health tax, we could be actually directing some of that money of people being able to develop and build their lives here towards much needed mental health programs here in our communities, community centers, and being able to help grow and build our economy base by bringing in and improving our cities so that people want to come and have businesses here, build infrastructure, improve all of that. Unfortunately, it's just one more slush fund that they are putting into the general fund and not improving our communities with. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Shaughnessy, 30-second rebuttal.
I just wanted to throw out a point of clarification. The money that's received through the water bank program is reinvested into the program. As I think Mr. Martin stated, there's different zones, there's yellow, green, and red zones. We don't like the fact that there's yellow, green, and red zones. We want the ability for everybody to have water in Kittitas County, and it's our goal to make water as accessible as possible, whether it's through private banks or our own bank. But people in areas of our community are still hurting because of this, and we still have work to do, and that's what this money is being used for, is to reinvest into the program to continue to improve this program. Thank you.
Can I make one quick comment?
Sure, 30-second rebuttal.
The money that the county gets when you purchase a county water right, you get to pay for that money, that county water right, every single year. It's not a one-time, I get to buy a water right, now I have water for it. The county continues to profit off of it. And I would love to see how that money is actually being spent back into the water banking so it's accessible, because you're looking at $2,000 initially, and then you're still going to pay a fee every year so that you have the accessibility to live on the land that you buy, which, by the way, is a constitutionally protected right to be able to develop and live here.
Mr. Martens, 30-second rebuttal.
Point of clarification, it's not just the county water bank that you pay into annually, it's all of the water banks. It's a meter fee, and it's only assigned to new uses. It is not assigned to existing uses that have been out there for 100 years.
Okay.
All right, this next question will be answered first by Sheriff Myers. What is the most important thing that our voters should consider when they're deciding who to vote for sheriff?
Well, I honestly believe that it's experience. It's that experience that gives you perspective. I've been asked many times why I'm involved with things such as shoreline restoration, access to the Yakima River, legislative committee through WASPIC, things of that nature. All of these things have an impact on public safety. The projects that were proposed for shoreline restoration were great for habitat, but if allowed to proceed the way that they were initially going to do, would have been tragic for river floaters and rescue. So all of these things require attention. You have to be involved with them. You have to have experience with them. It gives you that perspective so that you can have a holistic approach to public safety in the community. Growth. We've talked about growth quite a bit here. All of these developments that are coming in are going to have an impact on public safety. If you're not involved in the SEPA, if you're not involved in developing mitigation plans to propose in these developments, we're going to be chasing that development instead of leading it. We've already talked about the traffic infrastructure, the work that we've done and continue to do, the experience with the task forces, the experiences with traffic safety. All of those things are going to have an impact. You have to be able to look into the future to develop strategic plans and to have a strategic vision, such as the West Precinct. It's the experience in all of those things that gives you the perspective to look ahead and be planning for it. Thank you.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure, it's for voters who are watching this, what's the most important consideration for them when they're deciding who to vote for sheriff?
Well, I think having a fresh set of eyes in the department is very important, and I think having a professional approach and accountability is very important, and I think voters should get a choice to choose somebody that I believe is me and that can bring those things forward. That's the great thing about our democracy and our, where we live, is we get a choice to have somebody, become sheriff. And the thing about the current job that Clay has right now is he was appointed to the position. No one else ran for that position, and so I think it's very important that people have a choice for their sheriff. And actually, I have a little quote here. I'll just read over. Actually, I'll say my closing. I have the experience. I've led detachments of troopers. I held them accountable. I helped them throughout their career. I developed troopers. I developed other employees. And I believe it's something that I will bring to the sheriff's office.
Great, thank you.
Okay, off to the commissioners. Believe it or not, commissioner candidates, we have not even made it halfway through the list of prepared questions. So I hope you're ready for more. However, that more won't be occurring this evening. We are out of time. And I know that really probably ruins your night. But we're going to go ahead and move directly to closing statements. And Mr. Martens, I believe it's your turn to go first. 90-second closing statement, please.
Again, I would like to thank the Chamber and the Central Washington Home Builders for their efforts and those of the viewing and attending audience. I've always thought that we as citizens have a responsibility to hold our government accountable. I still feel this way and will expect you to hold me accountable if you should choose to elect me. An election is the only time that citizens can weigh in on how government is performing. It is the time to hold those in leadership accountable. An election is also the only time that direction, vision, and leadership can be analyzed for its performance. If, like me, you are concerned about the direction and effectiveness of our current leadership, I offer my services. I have the background, experience, and level-headed leadership qualities to find solutions to questions asked. Be sure to visit jerrymartens.org to learn more about me and my priorities. The time is now for you to weigh in and ask. The time is now for you to weigh in, and I ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Mrs. Carricker.
I want to thank everyone for coming today, especially the Chamber of Commerce for putting this on for us. Thank you. And for you both for coming and moderating, and everyone that is watching. Our county needs elected officials who understand that they are elected to be the voice of their constituents. Those that are capable of holding all departments to the highest standards, who will ensure transparency and will never overlook any kind of disengagement with the community by any of the county employees, especially when the tough questions are being asked. We need the strength of your leadership during unprecedented times. Elected officials that are willing to stand up for our constitutionally protected rights and understand that their powers are inherent of the people that voted them into office. This is why I'm running, because your voice matters to me. Because community health is more than just medical, it's social and economic. And we need to see leadership in our communities that's willing to take on mental health, substance abuse, homelessness, prioritize individual rights, water banking issues, be sure to tackle the growth management issues that we're seeing on a daily basis, and to promote transparency, accountability, and leadership. Please check out my website, www.kittitascommissioner.com. Go there, learn more about me, learn about my endorsements as well, and I look forward to earning your vote to be your Kittitas County Commissioner. Thank you.
Commissioner O'Shaughnessy.
Good evening. Thank you for all of those who are attending this evening in person, and thank you for all of those who are watching on Facebook Live. I'd like to remind you all once again, my name is Laura O'Shaughnessy, and I am running to retain my seat as Kittitas County Commissioner for District Number 2. I have the relationships and the experience to get the job done. It is not a coincidence that I've received over 140 endorsements, not only from our neighbors and our friends, but also from elected officials in Kittitas County and across the state of Washington. I am somebody that works collaboratively with others. That is why I took on engaging with all of the counties across the state of Washington to address our concerns with the governor's office and how it relates to COVID-19. What came out of this conversation was a strongly worded statement to the governor from 19 of 39 counties, which shared with him our need for local control. If you want a commissioner with a proven track record, has the ability to build bridges, and can get the job done, I'm asking for you to vote for me, Laura O'Shaughnessy, in this upcoming election as Kittitas County Commissioner for District Number 2. Thank you.
Okay, you guys can make your closing statements. I believe, Mr. Olson, you get to go first.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the Commerce, and thanks to everybody attending and watching. I want to be your next Kittitas County Sheriff, as there is a need for accountability, professionalism, and transparency in all law enforcement agencies, including our Sheriff's Office. As Sheriff, I plan on leading by example to the employees. I will continue with being approachable and communicate with the Sheriff's Office staff and the community. I will continue, as I demonstrated with the Washington State Patrol, to build strong partnerships with other agencies and organizations which will make our community and officers safer. Given the current nationwide discussion of police reform, it is critical that law enforcement not only hold the respect they have earned, but also earn the respect from those that have yet to place their trust. Change in leadership symbolizes that commitment and provides a renewed approach as our community grows and changes. I have 20 years of law enforcement experience, and I am college educated. The Washington State Patrol is known for its high level of training and professionalism, which I will bring to the Sheriff's Office. I have various levels of incident command training and command experience. I believe it is important to have a fresh set of eyes, perspective, and experience, which I will bring to the Sheriff's Office. I actually would like to share a quote that is from the Sheriff's webpage. The office of the Sheriff has not only survived, it has flourished. The most significant issues regarding the longevity of the office lies with the concept that it is an elected position. This allows members of the community to have an impact on the selection process and the removal process by virtue of their vote. Currently, the interim sheriff was appointed to the position as this was the only submitted application. The people of this amazing county deserve a choice in the November election, and I believe I'm the best candidate to represent everyone. Thank you for your time.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming and for having us here. I would like to be retained as sheriff because we're not done. We started developing plans to expand our infrastructure, to expand public safety throughout the county. With respect to professionalism and transparency, we've developed a process that is completely open. We have policies that are open and in compliance with best practices. We're doing new things. We're changing. We're just putting so much effort. There's so many things that we're trying to accomplish, and I'm hoping to continue to do that. We want to see these things through. So please visit the webpage, McCain-Clay-Myers-for-Sheriff.org, and I hope to have your vote.
Well, I want to give a big thanks to everybody who came and for the viewers, but I especially want to thank all the candidates who came and made this event happen. So I'd like to ask folks here if we give a quick round of applause. For our viewers, want to remind you that we have another forum next week, July 15th at 6 p.m. on Zoom, Facebook Live, as well as Inland Network TV and ECTV.